this episode of Let's Talk 716 Sports. My special guest is Joe Miller, and my co-host is John Karuba. And we will be talking some Bills football. How do you think the Bills will do the rest of the season?
Is that question for me or John?
For you, Joe.
Oh, perfect. I mean, the good news is Robbie, the Bills have everything in front of them. It's a fun phrase to say, the catbird seat. The Bills are sitting in the catbird seat, but they really are. But the concern is the fact that the Chiefs have a pretty easy schedule going forward. The Bills have a half game lead on them. They're both 9-3, and they're in first place. The Bills are because of the tiebreaker, the head-to-head tiebreaker that the Bills won in Kansas City. The Dolphins have a little bit of a tougher schedule. So the Dolphins have some tough teams to play, including the Bills and the Chargers this week. So the Dolphins aren't as much of a concern, but the Chiefs are. And then you've got the Bengals, who just beat the Chiefs 8-4 right behind them. But the Bills, in my opinion, have an opportunity here to kind of keep everything that they need and that they want to accomplish before the playoffs, kind of like right there, and check all those boxes. The good news is this team has, for the last couple of years, really kind of come to life at the end of the season. They were hot in the beginning of the season in 20 and 21, kind of hit a lull in the middle, and then came out hot like 2020. They went 8 straight, I think. I don't remember. They had one letdown game last year close to the end of the season, but I think the game didn't matter. I can't remember off the top of my head. But this is a team that kind of puts it together late, which is good. So my guess is they're going to have to run the table. They're going to have to win all 5 of their last games to get that number 1 seed. But yeah, we'll see. What about you, Robbie? What do you think?
I mean, I think the Bills have a good chance to beat the Jets, but I mean that Saturday night game against Miami, I think that one's going to be a little bit tougher.
I agree. That one and the Bengals game; those 2 games are going to be, we're going to be put to the test. John, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts as far as, it's funny, I think it just shows, the NFL, even though it's a 17-game, 18-week season, it kind of shows how the cream eventually rises to the top. I remember when the Bills, they started 6-1, but then all of a sudden they hit a little bit of a slump. And everyone's like, oh, the sky is falling. The Bills are overrated. Look at Miami. They're going to run away with it. And then everyone was jumping all over the Bengals when they were, I believe, 5-4 at one point, and totally forgot about the fact that this team did, in fact, make it to the Super Bowl last season. And now 3 weeks later, as we're heading down the home stretch, who is it that's really competing for the 1 seed for the most part? Bills, Chiefs, Bengals. And that was pretty much what we expected at the beginning of the season. So I think what this just shows is how lucky and how happy Bills fans should be to have somebody like Josh Allen. And the cream does get to the top. When you have the best quarterbacks outside of maybe Green Bay this year, which what has happened to them with Rodgers, but everybody else, most of them, what do they all have in common? They have that top quarterback, whether it's Joe Burrow, whether it's Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. And so I think that just kind of bears fruit. And I think the Dolphins, I give them some credit. They're a tough team, but I'm still not fully sold on Tua. So I think the Bills will get by the Dolphins because I'm not convinced they're going to beat the Chargers next week either. The Chargers are going to be mad after what happened to them against the Raiders. So I think they're going to be mad in that regard. And so, to me, the big one is going to be the Bengals. I think that Bills-Bengals game could really determine who ends up being the number 1 seed in the AFC.
Yeah, that's good.
So, I don't know, Robbie, if you got another question right now you want to ask. I did kind of have a follow-up question for Joe, though. Just curious as far as, obviously the Chiefs and the Bengals are probably the 2 biggest AFC competitors. Yes, the Dolphins, but we've kind of been over that. But as far as the Chiefs and Bengals go, who do you think, the Bills haven't seen the Bengals yet. All this talk about the three of them, we have a story of the Bills and Chiefs, Bengals, but we don't really have Bills, Bengals. If for some reason, let's say the Bills, and you don't want to say anything, hopefully it doesn't happen, but let's say the Bills stub their toe on one of their final 5 games and one of those other two teams runs the table. Who do you think overall the Bills are better suited to match up against in the playoffs if they have to go on the road? Do you think they're better suited to beat the Chiefs, or do you think they're better suited to beat the Bengals?
That's a great question. They both pose, interesting challenges that are very much different. The Bengals have that wide receiver core that's tough, but Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier do a very good job of game planning and scheming against good wide receivers and good quarterbacks. The Bengals traditionally have matched up well against the Bills, as have the Chiefs. And I know that this is a different team and years are different, and it's been a couple of years since we played the Bengals. But they always seem to have a difficult time, the Bills do, in Cincinnati, right? So we're going to find out a lot. What is it? Is it November 29th or 3rd, or November, December 29th or 30th? Is it Christmas Eve? It's one of those days right around there when the Bills actually play the Bengals in Cincinnati. So I think I would have to probably wait to answer that question until I see kind of the two play. But there's not a lot about the Bills playing in Kansas City that scares me a whole lot. I think the Bills at this point in time are used to that crowd. They're used to that stadium. They know what they're going to get from it. So, if right now with the unknown that is Cincinnati, I'd probably pick, if I was going to go on the road, I'd probably pick Kansas City just because the Bills have done it 2 out of the last 3 times, right? So I don't think it's routine for them. So the Bills are a big routine organization. And I think going to Kansas City would probably be a little bit routine for them versus, right now, I just don't know what Cincy, the Bills could come out and throttle the Bengals. You know what I mean? We just don't know. Or the Bengals could come out and throttle the Bills. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a fun end of the season, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think my only thing I would say to that, because I think as far as Cincinnati goes, the only thing, if they have to go back to Kansas City in the playoffs again, yes, the Bills have done really well in their last 3 trips there. 13 seconds away from going 3-0 in Arrowhead. Not even the Bengals can say that.
Right.
But I think what does hang over the Bills a little bit until they get that, proverbial monkey off their back is, 13 seconds, couldn't do it in the playoffs. When they go into Cincinnati, it's going to be a fresh slate. There isn't the 13 seconds. There isn't the bad traumatic memories of last year. So I think in a way that suits them better.
Until they play them in 3 weeks, then
yes, but even so, it's still a clean slate in the playoffs, though.
Yeah, true.
So
very good. Very true.
How far do you think the Bills will go in the playoffs?
Well, the goal is the Super Bowl, right? I mean, that's the expectation. That's been the expectation since the season started. It was kind of the expectation last year. If the playoffs go through Buffalo, I think that provides us a pretty nice iced road, pun intended, to make it all the way to the Super Bowl, to get to book our flights to Arizona. If the Bills have to go on the road, it presents a different challenge, right? And it's all about seeding at that point. Being the number 2 seed is being different than being the number 5 seed, or the number 6 seed. So I think this team has the ability to beat anybody. I said at the beginning of the year that there was nobody on their schedule that scared me. I didn't say or predict that they were going to go undefeated, but I felt like there was a possibility they could, just because there's nobody, like I said, that they were going to face. It was, too tough for them. And we've seen the Bills beat a lot of good teams this year. We've seen the Bills beat a lot of teams that have a winning record this year, teams that they've struggled against in the past, Titans and a couple other teams, but we've also seen them let up a little bit and kind of hurt themselves. If this team gets to the playoffs, whether as a 1 seed, a 2 seed, or potentially a 5 seed, in my opinion, if they don't hurt themselves, turnovers in the red zone, small issues like that, they can beat anybody and they can absolutely make it to the Super Bowl. That's what I think.
Yeah, and my thing is, a lot of people are saying, as far as the Bills, like they want, a lot of fans obviously want them to wrap up everything as early as they can, get Josh Allen and everybody some rest, especially with his elbow, which I think he's starting to heal from. I think we saw that against the Patriots. It was good to see Josh Allen start to look more like himself. But
Agreed.
I look at it as, I think the last couple years, the Bills have had more of the AFC East the last couple of years really hasn't been all that competitive because the Bills were blowing their division opponents out like 40-8 and just
Right.
walking hard. This year, it's a tough time every time they play them. And when you look at the schedule, I almost think it favors them that they have had to play so many hard teams in the sense that the Chiefs are probably going to run away with their division, whatever seed they get. I don't
Yeah.
see anyone making a late charge in the AFC West.
No.
I do think the fact that the Bills have had to play these tough teams, they got to win over every other division leading team in the AFC as it stands right now. I think that could really benefit them because they're battle tested, which I think will help them in the playoffs. Now, do you agree, or would you rather it be more of a cakewalk? Yes, you can rest more people, but maybe you're not as battle tested, which hurt them maybe the last couple of years.
Just win, baby. Right. So I mean, there's pros and cons to both as far as that goes. If you're destroying teams and blowing them out all the way through the season, that's when somebody jumps up and bites you because you get a little bit too overconfident and start reading your own press clippings and you don't complete the task. If you're battle tested, a lot of times you're grinding out games and it's every game is a slog, and you'd see potentially a lot of reasons when that happens. And we've seen the Bills with that problem. So for me, just win. Al Davis used to say it all the time: just win, baby. Win ugly, win pretty, just win. So I don't know that I have a preference. I know that it's funny because when you blow teams out, it's way more comfortable watching the games, but it's also a little less fun than when it's close. When it's close, they keep you on the edge of your seat. You're nervous all the time. So I just win. Just give me a Super Bowl, give me a chip, and then let's have a conversation after.
That's right. Well said. Well said. Rob, you got a follow-up point?
I think like the Bills could like get past the championship game in the AFC with their defense.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I agree. Von Miller's going to be a big piece of that, right? So I mean, if Von Miller can get back, if he can play, even at 90%, he's going to be better than the other guys that we have right now. So a lot's going to be riding on that knee. So I just had meniscus surgery and it's not fun. So he's electing to not have it, which is amazing to me because it's painful. So it's an annoying injury, but it's painful.
Yeah, I think that kind of shows what a heart and what a champion and what a warrior he is,
Yes.
And don't forget, he's got an opportunity to do an extremely rare thing.
Yep.
He wins a chip in Buffalo. That's now 3 different teams he would have won a Super Bowl for. And it's amazing to me when I watch, Jordan Phillips get back to being as good as he was. He looked like he did when he was with us a few years ago. You look at Shaq Lawson, he left again and it didn't work out so great. He comes back and again he jumps into the fountain of youth, let's call it, and it just seems like it's amazing how so many of these players that McDermott and Bean have been able to find that fit this system perfectly, and when they leave it's like something's missing, but then they come back. And even AJ Klein was good a few weeks ago. So I mean, I think that says a lot to the culture that Sean McDermott and Brandon Bean have built here. I don't know. Do you notice that same thing, Joe?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know that it's culture as much as it's just more. It seems like these guys have said that they can come here and they can be themselves. So they can come here and they can play to their strengths and do the things that they do well, right? So which is funny too, because like a guy like Shaq Lawson isn't a 4-3 defensive end; he's a 3-4 player. So he played in the 3-4 in Clemson, and he was drafted by Rex Ryan to play in a 3-4 defense. So there's some interesting points about the fact that like Shaq Lawson actually plays well and fits as well as he does in this defense. So, but they do the best they can to scheme guys. AJ Klein is a perfect example. AJ Klein was not good when he first got here, and then they finally figured out kind of what his strengths were and how to use him, and then he was effective. And then he goes off to the Ravens and doesn't play well. They trade him to the Bears. The Bears cut him, and lo and behold, he comes back to Buffalo, and he comes in spot duty when the Bills need him due to injuries. And to your point, John, he plays well. So yeah. So I think you're right, Robbie. I think that the Bills can absolutely make it to the to the Super Bowl. based on the defense alone, especially if Von Miller gets back and gets healthy and Trey continues to play well. And there's a rumor out there somewhere that Micah Hyde might make it back for the playoffs, which would be insane if that happened. So
yeah. What do you think the Bills' chances are of landing OBJ? Because of course we got to ask you that.
I have no idea, and I don't. It's funny to me to see kind of like the commentary and kind of how the conversations are going, just about that, because Josh Allen on Kyle's Basement today said he doesn't know. The Cowboys are now talking about how they don't trust the physical and the report of him being able to play. So now they're wondering if there's like misinformation being spread, whether it's to get people off the scent or to effectively, what's the word? Provide an excuse as to why they didn't sign him or didn't want him, or I don't know, man. I think the Bills need him. I think the Bills can use him if he can play. But we're going to find out probably in the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a mystery. It's like, don't we have enough with Aaron Judge and the Yankees and Giants? Yeah, the OBJ thing also has to continue to wander around. Questions. You
Right.
never know what goes on behind closed doors.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
Robbie, you got another follow-up?
What is your expectation for the off season?
Ooh, that's tough. I haven't thought that far, to be honest with you. There's obviously some roster work that's going to have to be done. The Bills are starving for offensive linemen and boundary wide receivers, especially now that Isaiah Hodgins has gone to the Giants. I expect the Bills to probably retool the wide receiver room, probably work a little bit in the offensive line. This could potentially be the first year that we see a Sean McDermott team not draft a defensive player first in the first round. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. There's some big contracts out there that need to be taken care of. Jordan Poyer's contract is out there. Ed Oliver, Tremaine Edmonds is up, and then Ed Oliver's coming up. So it'll be, in his 5th year. So they'll be talking about that and potentially wanting to get him done maybe before his 5th year is up and the price goes up, because that's what's going to happen. So you got Poyer, you got Edmonds, you've got, Oliver. There's a lot kind of going on in that from that standpoint as far as player salary. So it'll be interesting to see just kind of how it works and how it works out, because a guy like Tremaine Edmonds is important to this defense. A guy like Jordan Poyer seems important to this defense. And obviously Ed Oliver's been kind of coming on lately. So we'll see. It's I don't know that I've got an expectation outside of that. So probably some offensive linemen, some wide receivers, and then just working through contract stuff.
So if you had to choose, I know this is, but if you had to choose between Poyer and the two big ones seem to be Poyer and Edmonds, and then we could throw Oliver in too. But if you had to really choose between Poyer and Edmonds, and you could only bring one of them back, who are you choosing?
It's absolutely going to be Edmonds for me, just because it's easier to replace a safety. And it's easier to find a safety, whether it's in free agency or even from a draft standpoint. So, do the Bills draft a safety in the first round than it is to find a Mike linebacker in a nickel 4-4-2 that's a very specialized defense, a guy that can call and a guy that can run sideline to sideline. And age is a big part. So, Tremaine Edmonds is 22, 23. I mean, Tremaine Edmonds, or 24. I mean, he's a pup as far as that goes. So super, super young. So yeah, for me, it's Edmonds based
that's
on.
That's a hot take to me, because I actually kind of have the opposite. I kind of think Poyer, because you don't know what the status of Micah Hyde is going to be next year. I know he's out for this year. I know there's some talk he could come back. I don't know how feasible that is, and so your secondary, at least in the linebacking core, yes, Tremaine Edmonds has really impressed me this year with this play. Don't get me wrong. But, at least there's Matt Milano, who I think is another beast. So if you had to let Edmonds leave, you've got a little coverage, at least on one side in Milano. If Poyer leaves and Hyde comes back and he's not the same because of his injury, you have no real you're risking starting, younger players, which can work with this team. We've seen with Kyrie Elam and all that, but we've also seen at times Benford struggle and what a risk that can be. So I would lock up Poyer first, just so I have a little coverage. The big thing has always been depth with the Bills, right? So at least make sure you're covered a little in both positions. So I'd probably bring Poyer back, but you really can't go wrong with either.
But your argument, I mean, you're using your argument against yourself. You've got Milano who can cover up for Edmonds, and I know you're saying that Micah might not come back the same, but all reports are is that he's going to be fine. So the fusing of the vertebrae that they did in his neck, and I can't remember between which vertebrae they were. They're saying he's going to be totally fine. So now it's the same thing. You've got Micah to kind of cover up for Poyer. You got a young guy in DeMar Hamlin who's already kind of shown he can play. There's nobody behind Tremaine Edmonds. Like when Tremaine goes, there's nobody. And the reality is Edmonds getting hurt pretty much lost us that Vikings game. Like the Bills were playing well until Edmonds got hurt. Now you can have a conversation that the defensive backfield doesn't look as good without Poyer. I agree, but Mike is a pretty
if he's listen, hopefully it's fine. That's totally good. I guess I'm just saying if for some reason he's not, you don't have necessarily a Matt Milano in the secondary that can cover up at all, and now you're gonna have
an easier time finding a safety in the draft or free agency than a linebacker. That's
true. True.
The linebacker that Edmonds plays, not to mention the length of contract has to be a consideration. So, as much as, they're not going to cost about the same money, but Edmonds is going to sign a 5-year deal, whereas Poyer's going to sign a 2-year deal. So now you're addressing the situation again in 2 years, versus locking up Edmonds, and you can kind of put it to bed for half a decade.
True. Good point.
Good conversations, guys.
Joe, do you have any questions for me or John?
I don't know. How do you feel about the Sabres there, Robbie? How they doing?
I mean, so far they're doing pretty good. I mean, Tage Thompson has been doing pretty good lately.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite player on this team?
Darlene.
Is it? Yeah, Rasmus Dahlin. Yeah, interesting. I haven't watched a whole lot of hockey. Every time I want to get into it, they lose. So I feel like it's my fault. I feel like it's my fault that they're losing. It's like they go on a win streak. It's like, oh, I'm gonna watch, and then I watch, and then they lose. It's like, dang it, it's all my fault. People on Twitter have told me to stay away from the Sabres for a couple of years just because it seems to happen that way. But I used to be a huge Sabres fan. I had a buddy that had season tickets, and I used to buy 10 games a year from him. And my wife and I used to go all the time. So I've been times in my life I would race home to see Sabres games, or I would catch the replay at midnight on Empire Sports Network. That's how old I am. That's how far back I go. But yeah, they need
I remember that too.
How's the goaltender doing? Don't they need a goaltender still?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they got Ukko Pekka in, but I don't think he's the answer. I think he's kind of a stopgap, a bridge gap. I will say Devin Levi, if they can get him locked up, once he comes up, to me, that is the answer at goaltender for them. I think as far as me and the Sabres, as far as I'm concerned, good to see their offense exploding. Yeah. Like even during the losing, I mean, they're averaging like almost 4 goals a game. I mean, it's great to see them. They put up 6 against St. Louis. They put up 6 the other night. I think the solution is just put the goat head jerseys on and just leave them on all the time. They're 2-0 since they put those on. You know what? Don't take them off then. Just keep going with them. But it's good to see the offense come around. I think Levi, once they get him up here, is going to be big. I think defense are set. It's good. I think we're finally seeing a real legitimate core when you watch them between Peterka and Quinn and Cousins and Thompson, and then obviously on defense, who they've got. You can really see something building here, and I think for a long time that wasn't the case. It would be Eichel or it would be 1 or 2 players. And then you just look and it's like, who else? So, you got to be able to see the forest through the trees. And I know that's a hard viewpoint to have when you have the longest drought in the NHL in terms of playoffs. But if you see it, you could see that it's coming. And, I'm excited to see what's ahead for them. I just hopefully the goaltending can get figured out, and hopefully we'll see Devin Levi up here sooner rather than not.
Yeah, that's good. Good take.
Where could my viewers find you at?
Oh, goodness gracious. So I do a post game show called the Overreaction Post Game Show on Buffalo Rumblings that follows every Bills game. So if it's a 1 o'clock game, it's usually at 8 o'clock on Sunday nights. If it's a primetime game, it usually goes about midnight. So I don't go immediately after the game, just because I have notes and stuff to kind of put together. And there's a whole bunch of shows that go immediately after the game. So I prefer to kind of go a little bit afterwards so that, everybody's not jumping all over each other. I do the Off Tackle with John Fina show. John Fina, the former left tackle, franchise left tackle for the Buffalo Bills. That's on Monday nights at 8 o'clock. The Hump Day Hotline, also with Buffalo Rumblings. And then the Hump Day Hotline on Wednesday nights, generally at 8, sometimes 9, depending on schedule and issues that I have with traveling and stuff like that. But that's actually this Wednesday. I think it's gonna be at 9 o'clock this week. Also on Buffalo Rumblings. And then I just started doing some mini podcast type stuff on my own podcast feed, the Overreaction Sports Network. And I do 3 shows a week. I do Mafia Monday, and that's just basically us getting into our feelings and kind of a short, quick kind of like recap of the game. I do a Wake Up Wednesday show, and that show is primarily about just kind of my picks for the week. If there is news for the Bills, we talk about it, and usually like a single game parlay. And then Rapid Fire Friday is the third show that I do a week on that one. And that's basically where I bring in a guest. I had Reed Ferguson on and I had Joe Marino on. And I don't script the questions. I just rapid fire 10 questions at them that they don't know I'm going to ask. It's a short conversation, 15, 20, 25 minutes. And we just have a lot of fun with it. So that's where you can find me. And then Twitter, if you're not following me on Twitter, please do at Joe Miller Wired. So yeah, that's a lot. That's a mouthful.
But you said it well, and that's what counts.
A lot. A lot. So yeah. My wife says I'm too busy.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Sometimes that can be a good problem to have,
Sure. I agree.
Hopefully you enjoyed your time on the show.
Oh yeah, this was a blast. Yeah, it's the second time I've been on, so thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you for your time. Certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, for real. Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in or listening to this episode of Let's Talk 716 Sports. Thank you to my special guest, Joe Miller, and my co-host, John Karuba, and go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills. Go Sabres.
Go Sabres.
Go UB. Go everything Buffalo.